Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. May I have your attention, please? Thank you for being here, enjoying a fellowship and our snacks. But we do have a program today. We're fortunate to have a couple of representatives, important workers from Montgomery County, to give a presentation, an introduction to issues involved in aging in place. We are all getting older, nobody's getting younger, and we have decisions, many of us have decisions to make for ourselves or our parents about whether we should be downsizing, or possibly making adjustments so we can live where we are. And I don't want to rush anyone. Please enjoy your snacks as long as you can. Don't feel that you have to stay and hear all of this, but it's an important discussion for us to consider. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, and who's here beside me, and her name is Pazit Aviv. She's a community outreach manager who's worked with aging and disability services in the county for 11 years, and she'll introduce some of the things that we should be considering as we decide what our next step will be in our life. Following that, we also have a second representative from the county, Carol Smith, who is sitting here and enjoying our time together, and she has brought numerous documents and handouts which are in the hallway and are useful for you in considering the things that the county can offer you to help you make your decisions, who you can talk to, and where you can get help. So feel free to help yourself to those materials that they have provided to help you in these decisions. With no further discussion from me, I'd like to turn this over to Ms. Pazit Aviv to start talking to you about factors to consider.
Thank you, Gary. My name is Pazit. Welcome to this little talk of mine. Gary and I had a series of conversations, and I kind of confused him to no end, because once you start delving into this, you find yourself a bit overwhelmed. So the goal of this conversation is, and it really truly is a conversation, and I hope that as I bring ideas and questions to the fore, you would involve yourselves in it. If you have questions, if what I say makes no sense, or if you have a different opinion, I'd love to hear it. And what I hope is for this conversation to, what I call, be a starter point, and then you all as a community can decide what you want to do with this further. So this is more of a intro session. So we're talking about aging, and the lovely Jim is going to help me. I'm thinking, I didn't even ask you, but can you help me? Thank you, Jim. Okay, so I like to start with, you moving forward? This is not moving it forward, so we're stuck. This is one of my favorite cartoons. For those of you who don't see in the back, there are two guys sitting on a bench in the park, and the guy says, they sat me down and said, Pop, we need to talk about aging in place. And then he goes on to say, aging in place of what? And that is the question, right? Love it. Okay, so moving on. This is us in the US. Do you see this life expectancy chart? When I first started doing this talk, this presentation, the line was consistently upward trending, and there's a dip. What is this dip? One, what else? Even less pleasant, if you can even say this. Fentanyl. We had a big fentanyl epidemic, and we're now doing better. But those two coming together were very, very detrimental to our longevity. But as you see, we're recovering. And look at the below, Montgomery County overall, we're lucky. We have 83.5 average lifespan. Females live longer than males. Some people who have more money live longer than people who do not have money. But overall, this county is doing pretty well. So the question is, what does this mean? You want to move on to the next? Because for most people, it's like keep on keeping on. I've been doing this thing for 50, 60, 70, 80 years. I have my system, I have my rhythm. I'll keep on doing whatever I've done. But aging process is no joke. And if you think of it as a status quo, I want to call it as a call to action. Because the question is, what would it take? What would it take for us as individuals, but also as communities, as families, as neighborhoods, as communities of faith? What would it take for us to accomplish goal of ours, which is to age in place, especially if we want to have high quality of life, dignity, self-determination? And so that has so many different answers and so many different domains. And I'm going to touch on the 4, 5 key elements. And each one of them represent an entire subject matter that we can then delve into when we get there. I will say one more thing. You know how when you get pregnant, you get all excited and there's all these books, what to expect when you're expecting. There's all these cultural cues and everybody tells you things and you know what's going to happen and everybody knows what's going to happen. There's nothing like this for aging. Nothing. There's no what to expect when you're aging. And we're all aging if we're lucky, right? So I get so many phone calls from so many people who say like overwhelmed, like, what is this thing? And everybody struggles on a family basis. They think they're kind of like the only ones who are dealing with this drama. But guess what? Every single family. And it's a multi-generational thing, because if your grandparents are not doing well, your parents are not doing well, you're not doing well. So this conversation in my mind isn't, I'm not just, let's say, I have age restriction. So if you're over 50, come in. Otherwise, it's not for you. Because it's for everybody. It's how you think strategically on this journey of life that we're all a part of. So welcome, babies. Thank you for being in here. Bring your ice cream. Okay, the first element we're going to talk about is the built environment. You want to switch to this slide? Okay, I have kind of a few images. I thought it would speak louder than words on a page. Because built environment is your home, but it's also your neighborhood. It's also public spaces. And I think we're doing a bit better with our public spaces and our homes because that's individual domain. We don't have data, but I'm curious to see how many of you think that your home is accessible. Let's say somebody with a disability or mobility challenge needed to come and visit you. How easy would it be for them to come in if you're not in apartment building excluded? I'm seeing, yeah. So that is representative of what everybody else is experiencing. Most of our homes, hi, sweetie, he's adorable. Most of our homes were built in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s. Nobody thought about those things. They like themselves the steps because it's easier for water management. The rooms are kind of smaller, especially on the main floor. There's no bedrooms. Where is this, the, washer dryer in the basement, tuck it away. So when you get to the point that you need the home to be ready for you, for your mobility challenges, be temporary or permanent, you get stuck. So built environment is critical. We have lots of resources around that. People have given it tremendous amount of thought. There are even tax credit programs, both on the county and the state level. But as I said, I'm not even digging deeper into this. We're having the big conversation right now. But I will take questions as you have them. So feel free to just stand up and say what you have to say. But what I like about those images is that a lot of people, when they think about accessibility, they imagine something ugly, something that's unsightly, something that's going to ruin their sale value, blah, blah, blah. But you can actually do things really, really aesthetically and beautifully and functionally. So I invite you to think about that, and maybe have a whole conversation about design for life and what does that mean. Next. Oh, that's a biggie. And that encompasses so much. So I'm happy we have Patty, who's talking about end of life stuff, because it's definitely included. But it's recognizing the aging process requires that you think about yourself and your loved one differently. the nutritional changes that come about as a result of chronic diseases, just a changing body. Things don't work the way they had, digestion, metabolic issues, and you can't leave things the way they were. So do you understand what you're dealing with and how to adapt both your nutritional as well as your physical regimen of what would it take for you to age with healthy lifestyle? The second one is more community oriented because I don't know if you noticed, I'm having a hard time finding a good primary care physician. It's really difficult. Like I see somebody and they're all fuzzy and lovey, and then the next time I want to see them and say, oh yeah, you can see the, what do you call it? The nurse practitioner, which is lovely, but I sign up for my doctor. And so finding access to good care, somebody who will spend the time thinking with you, talking with you about stuff is extremely difficult. We do not have enough geriatrician. That's a fact. People can go on wait lists and wait for a long time. There is a huge shortage of nursing care and private duty home care at home. We don't pay people enough. It's a burnout job, and there isn't enough policy geared toward ensuring that we have sufficient infrastructure for healthcare services. Last one, oh, also healthcare navigation. I was just talking to this guy. He's trying to create an app. His mom had a complex medical situation. The doctors were talking to him medicalese and having them to make really complex decisions on the spur of a moment because things were urgent. And they were overwhelmed. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're asking me to make really critical decisions and you're not giving me the time or the tools necessary. And then all the responsibility is on me as a family member. And so he's trying to create this app where the health information will be translated to human language, real explanation, pros and cons, what you should consider, what's the best thing. Because as our medical knowledge evolves, we have more nuances, but also higher complexities when it comes to solutions. And that's for, you know, anybody who's going to be dealing with a medical situation. How do we make sense of a very complex and fractured medical system? So navigating those is super complicated. And advanced care plans. We have experts in the room, so I don't presume to even say too much about that. But having no plan is really not a plan. And that has nothing to do with age because things can happen at any point in time. And so thinking about what is advanced care planning, making your wishes known is important for anyone. And that's another topic of conversation to just delve into on its own. Yeah, go ahead, Kendra. Yes. What does advanced care planning mean? It means the kind of choices you would like to be made if you're unable to make your decisions on your own. What are your preferences in terms of particular intervention? And it's not a simple answer. It used to be DNR, do not resuscitate. Somebody at the end of their life is telling their loved ones that if there's some medical emergency, they do not want to be resuscitated. However, it is much more complicated because there's all these different interventions the doctors can offer. And this is why I think this kind of conversation needs to be its own conversation. What does that look like? How do I communicate to my family, to my medical providers, what I prefer to have been done if I cannot express my will? And have that well in advance because you never know when it's going to be needed. Do you know more examples? It's related to healthcare. What kind of healthcare intervention, be it surgery, medical, pharmaceutical, or otherwise? Let's say, to give you an concrete example. Tomorrow, I drive down the street. God forbid somebody crashes into me. I'm comatose. Multiple injuries, system failure, blah, blah, blah. The doctors go to my husband and say, okay, she's on life support. What do you want to do? My husband needs to make decisions about, should he keep me on life support? Should we terminate? And then if we haven't had the conversation, he doesn't know. Do I want to fight for whatever hope that may be at the tail end of it? Or do I want to say, I don't want that. Take me off life support. These kind of decisions you have to have conversation with people you love so that when they are faced with really terrible decisions to make, they don't flail because you've had the conversation ahead of time. Does that make sense? It's sad, but it's important. And there's actually lots of programs and services around that. There's a thing called Death Cafe. It is facilitated around people just want to talk about death and dying. And we can bring that here if you're interested, if there's enough interest. Yes? Okay. Moving forward. Mobility. How many people here drive cars to everywhere? Just show of hands. Vast majority of you, right? Imagine your life without a car. Grocery stores, errands, doctor's appointment, visiting friends, showing up to friend's house on a Sunday. What do you do when you can no longer, for any reason, drive a car? In our highly suburbanized community, and even in some more urban parts of the county, it is exceedingly difficult to stay at home when you cannot move around. And what I wanted to know is that there are lots of people thinking about that. It's super complicated. We haven't figured this out yet because it is a community-based approach. We have public transportation, we have metro, we have volunteer ride program. This is the area that is served by Only Go Rides, which offers volunteer driving program if you need any help getting places. And there's a bunch of county-funded subsidies for taxis to actually go places. So we're trying to fix this, but it's a huge issue for everybody. Questions about that? Nope. Okay. Yes. I'm sorry. Say again? Yes. Yes, it is. So this is why I noted it is different, because the Metro Access is specifically geared toward folks who are unable to use public transportation for any reason. And their commitment is they can provide routes and support to anywhere public transportation gets to. So if you happen to live in the boondocks, Poolsville, and there's no bus that gets there, Metro Access will not get there either. But if you need Metro Access, they will get you to where you need to get to, especially if you have a disability, you apply for help, a doctor will sign the forms, and it's not a easy to use service, but it's there for people. So transportation could be a whole other biggie. Yeah, go ahead. Escorted transportation is recognizing that sometimes just the cab isn't enough. If somebody needs somebody to go with them and they don't have anybody, there's going to be someone to go with you. Sometimes you combine a friend to go with you, but sometimes the county actually has a program to pay for someone to go with you. So it's a package deal, ensuring that you can get out of the house, you walk to the whatever vehicle is being used, and then go into the appointment, whatever that is. Yes. Only Go Rides. They serve the greater Olney area. There are many, many volunteer driving programs in the county. They don't have full coverage, but they're pretty robust. Yes, I'll show you where it is. Sometimes finding the right answer that is uniquely tailored to your situation requires some more in-depth conversation. And there's an agency, it's called Connect a Ride. County pays them to do a specific consult on, okay, where do you live? What's your financial situation? What's your level of mobility? Where do you need to go? And make recommendations based on a whole slew of knowledge of whatever is out there to then give you the right answer. So I'm saying yes because you could potentially browse and find all these things, but it's better to just call them to have the conversation. And I can show you where it is, Barbara.
So they're removing the bus stop from in front of Friend's house. So I have to assume that we're no longer going to be eligible for Metro Access.
That, not necessarily. I think you need to talk to them specifically. That's an advocacy topic.
It sure is.
Yes, it's a big deal. And if I were you, if they're moving your bus stop, I think this is wartime. No, you guys don't like war. Peacetime. Nonviolent advocacy. What? Peacetime activism. No, but seriously, don't let them move your bus stop. Yes. Okay, other questions about, so you can actually bring somebody from the Jewish Council on the Aging, and they have a whole office that's expertise, whose expertise is transportation. How do you get around? What are the resources? How do you access those resources? Jewish Council for the JCA. Yeah. Okay, next. The number one concern for people when you ask them, what are you concerned about the most as you age? Money. It's no surprise, right? It's so expensive, especially living in Montgomery County, especially as you age. Cost really go up all the time. Your revenue or whatever income you have doesn't necessarily go up accordingly. And so people look with dismay and not really sure if they have enough. Factually, I think the last data point I saw is I think over 60% of folks over 60 do not have enough money to last them their lifetime at the same levels of quality of life they've been living so far. So what does that mean? It's a huge question. I don't have all the answers. I think it's a really significant question, but you can't ignore it. It's the elephant in the room. But doing life planning on your own with some reliable financial planner, which I found to be really difficult because most of them, when they recommend products to you, they got skin in the game. And I'm really frustrated by the way the sector operates because we do not have unbiased, impartial advisors who say, I got you. I found one in DC actually, and we talked to them a lot. But it's not easy to find somebody, and they don't always disclose everything to you. So are they really giving you the best advice? And sometimes, I mean, think about the environment we're right now, where uncertainty is so high. I don't think anybody knows where we're going and what it means. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have the conversation. So thinking about estate planning, thinking about financial literacy, how to prevent from scams and fraud, it's just unbelievable the amount of theft taking place when people are being scammed online daily, locally. So being savvy, knowing the warning sign, knowing where to call when you're concerned. Power, information is power. Okay, moving forward. Last but not least is our social needs. I think that for a long time, there'd been a complete undervaluation on the importance of having a robust social network for individuals. And this is a little assessment of why things are so broken down. Now, you are here on a Sunday at Friend's house, which means to me, I think that you are relatively healthy with your social network. You are part of a faith community. You show up, you have friends, you talk, you eat, you listen, you have fun, you have ice cream with the kids. But a lot of people are not a part of a faith community. In fact, there's been a significant decline in participation in religious institutions in this country. A lot of young folks don't join any kind of community. So when we look about what's going on around us, we are experiencing a significant social epidemic, social isolation epidemic. People are completely disconnected. And it has come about as a result of disinvestment in a complete misunderstanding of one of the core aspects of what it means to be human. So we're talking about suburban communities. Think about suburbia. Some places don't have sidewalks, right? They just have a little road. You need to like navigate between the cars if you want to be safe. Where do people entertain? Do they have front porches with a little swing and a little rocking chair? Deck in the back with a barbecue. And a lot of people have these really nice long driveways into the house, tucked away in the lot. If they don't want to see their neighbors, they will never see a human being around them as long as they live. I've had all these, because I help organize communities, sometimes we have these planning groups around villages, and this woman on that side of the living room says, hi, I am Charlie. I've lived on Elm Street for 30 years. And the guy across in the same living room says, oh, I've lived on Elm Street for 40 years. I've never seen you before. Not once. This is kind of a common occurrence. We do not build our environments unlike friends have. Yep. So where you intentionally create spaces where people will see each other. They can just hang out. They will be with one another informally, unexpectedly. It's just there. There are a couple of cities that were built with this kind of mindset, Greenbelt being one, Kentlands being another. So if you want to see what it looks like, go for a drive, but it makes a big difference. Additionally, we had for many years a very comfortable situation. I call it the patriarchy, where one person was working out of the house, the wives stayed behind and completely misunderstood. Everybody misunderstood what they were doing in the community. They were like the weavers, the caregivers. They knew what was going on. So many times I talk to people and say, oh, I remember a time where if I were up to no good on down that street in 5 minutes when I come home, my mom would know all about it because the people were there. It's not a desert. People knew each other. It was organic. Nobody told them to do that. They just did that. So we had these fabrics of community connections that women, for the most part, were responsible for it. But because it didn't produce, it's not money generating revenue source. It's just one of the most important things we have in our lives. But because we think about things in terms of money and economic activity, this thing, when women left the home to the workforce, this whole thing collapsed. But nobody saw that it was collapsing because no one noticed it before. So we've created a vacuum. And I'm not saying somebody needs to go back into the house and stop working. I just say we need to call it for what it is and intentionally create something to replace it. Yeah. Yeah.
The nuclear family is recent.
Yeah.
There used to be multi-generational
Yes.
family because women have worked.
Yes.
correct? But having the grandmother and the aunt and
Yes.
everybody else, that's the other piece that may create all this. Actually, as the millennials have stayed in their family.
True. So there are some changes in the trends. I think that they're because of economic pressures, some millennials go back to the home. Many of them actually need to leave their parents' home to seek out economic opportunities other states. So we're seeing all these complex trends. There's all these things happening. It's not just one thing. It is true that there is a return to multi-generational living because of financial pressures. Also, think about, you want to stop?
Out that if you have a question, please use the mic so that they can hear you on the Zoom session off-site.
Oh, so just raise your hand and then Gary can walk around. So think about our lives. So going back to the nuclear family. If both parents work, right? So they get up in the morning, they get the kids to school, they work. They come home, kids, dinner, laundry, dog, backyard, and rinse, repeat. Most people don't participate in faith communities. So they have two main social circles in their lives. Work, kids, or nuclear family. So when you retire and kids move out of the house, then people look around and say, hey, where's everybody? Where is everybody? They haven't built an infrastructure, a robust social network to support them. And I'll say more about this. Let's say people here in Friends House, okay, I'm going to do a little survey. How many of you are in Montgomery County? Just show of hands. Most of you. How many are you within a 4-mile radius? Show of hands. Okay, so for those of you who are more than 4 miles and even 3 miles, let's say you can't drive anymore. How do you get here on a Sunday? If you can't walk 3 miles, I mean, I'm assuming that if you can't drive, walking 3 miles is a bit of a challenge. How do you get here for Sunday service to be a part of your community if you cannot drive anymore?
When our friends can't get to meeting, they ask for a ride and one
Okay.
of us helps each other out.
All right, so that depends on people asking. Go ahead, Kendra.
I live 30 to 45 minutes from here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody's going to come pick me up.
So that's what Kendra is saying. What if Kendra didn't feel comfortable asking? So she would say maybe 1 Sunday, 2 Sundays, 3 Sundays. What about Sunday number 10?
But then you don't have community connections anymore.
Thank you. What happens is we used to have faith communities that were within walking distance. It was all geographically based. But now we commute to church. And then when you cannot drive anymore, there goes that community. Unless you have a super intentional, organized way, very robust way of letting people know that there is a structured program.
Right.
It doesn't depend on them feeling comfortable, not comfortable. It's a given.
Patrice,
just-
we also have people on Zoom watching this because some of them can't drive now.
That's lovely, lovely, and not enough.
Yeah.
I'm completely with you. And some people would actually prefer to do the Zoom. Maybe they have caregiving responsibility. Maybe there's significant mobility. Maybe they don't feel well. So it's not mutually exclusive. It's this. And what do you do for people when they cannot get here on a Sunday? How do you make sure they don't have to feel like they need to beg for a ride? I mean, these are really serious questions. I'm just like bringing it up here. Yes.
But a while ago on a Zoom call, I asked people on Zoom, how necessary is this? And a number of them, and we have members who essentially commute in from Maine, Washington State, Vermont, Florida, who come here to meeting and say, without that, I would not be as connected. So it is possible, but you're right, it is different.
Yeah, I can say with great confidence that COVID was challenging for communities because they had to change the way people connected. The upside was a discovery of online access. Most villages have higher levels of participation in almost all meetings when they're on Zoom. But I will say, and I'm feeling the loss of this munching, chatting. Zoom, you won't get that. Human to human. Oh, you have legs. Are you walking well? How do you look? How's your complexion? What's going on? These things, priceless. So if somebody can't, that's fine. We should have this accessibility offered. And yes, moving forward.
So I don't know if any of you remember back in the 70s when we had to get gas every other day because by our license plate number with the gas. So I live in Gaithersburg in the city. And what I was going to a different church at the time, but basically this was, I thought, there's the train. I could go visit my mother because my family lived I'd go to Union Station and then take the B&O to their house. I could go to the bank, my bank, walking. But I couldn't go to the church of my choice. But there were 5 or 6 churches within walking distance. So it required me, I didn't have to do this, but it came to mind, what if I needed to not have, no car? And I could manage where I was. But it wasn't what I might have chosen. Is that the point?
I don't know that there's one point. I think people need to make different choices. Some people that are socially flexible and friendly and outgoing can land anywhere and feel happy and make friends easily. For others, it's a bit more of a challenge.
Yeah.
And for some people, spiritually, they just feel like they need to connect with whomever is the leader and with the vibe of the community. And, and I spoke to this woman. It was when I was working at HOC. The first time I learned about this was many, many years ago. Elizabeth House. I was doing this intake with this woman, super vibrant, happy, unbelievable, but she didn't have a car. And she said, I was a member of my church for 30 years. I was their like Sunday teacher. I was responsible for the tithe. I was doing all these things all Sunday, every Sunday. I gave my heart to that community. And then I lost my ability to drive. And it didn't even occur to me, but this is why talking to people, sort of generating these kind of experiences that then make sense. What does that mean? Because it was her personal experience, but it's all of us. It's our communities. What does that mean? Because if you get stuck on just a pixelated level, you don't see the big picture. And this conversation is about the big picture. It's about you as individuals, but it's also about us as a community, us as a county. So, but that's a good point. All right, moving forward. I wanted to talk about the village a little bit, and then we'll open up for conversation and let Carol, if you want to say some few words. A lot of people, having said all what I've said, when they retire, they feel the changes, they see the reality for what it is, and they say, we need to do something about that. And so they organize themselves mostly locally into small nonprofits who are set out to do two things. Number one, reweave the local social connections in the community and neighborhood. Intentionally create spaces like you guys are having today for folks to just show up and participate and be active and engage in the way that makes sense to them. Could be large events, small events in someone's homes, outside in the park, in a recreation center. It doesn't even matter what they do, so long as you create an infrastructure for connections. The second one is neighbors helping neighbors. So this guy, I was helping him start a village in Kemp Mill. And I had just come in and he said, the electrician just left. I had to pay $100 for him to change the light bulb in the ceiling because I didn't feel comfortable climbing up a ladder. Just an example. But there's lots of tiny little things a friendly neighbor could do if they knew that a person needed that help. You don't need to be a professional to do that kind of stuff. So villages organize. They have a cadre of volunteers that are trained and vetted and supported, insured. And then people can call and say, hey, I need a ride. I want to visit my friend in a hospital. They're not doing well. I want to visit them. Can someone give me a ride? And then a volunteer says, I can do it. Or my light switch is broken. Can somebody help fix it? Or my computer is acting really weird. I don't know what this thing is. Can someone help me fix that? Simple stuff, not professional stuff, but goes a long way. So I just wanted you to know that there's a thing called a village. And actually, Friend's House, Barbara and I had been working for years with Joan, reminding her last name, Joan Liversidge. She still is, she's making sure it was a long time. I never know. I can't make any, we haven't heard from each other. And Carol Kober too, right? So, but not in the area. I think she moved somewhere. I thought Carol, okay, different story. I thought she moved out of the area. Anyway, so Friend's House was working intentionally to build these kind of connections, this kind of infrastructure. I think some stuff had stayed on, others did not. I haven't heard in a long time. So good, because it means there could be a basis within Friend's House community here, but also all of you who don't live in Friend's House. What does that mean for you? So if you want to think about it, you want to talk about it, I'm always happy to engage in this kind of conversation. I've helped over 20 different communities organize themselves in the past 10 years. So it's what I love doing. So I'm done with little spiel. I was going to show you a website. Do you want to go on to Google? Okay. Google just Montgomery County Senior Site. There you go. Yes. First hit. Here is where this is kind of a dashboard and a entry gateway into all kinds of different services and resources and programs in Montgomery County. It's very rich in information. All you need to do is, of course, Google Montgomery County Village, Montgomery County Senior Site, and you'll find this. And just know it's there, bookmark it, and browse it at your leisure. And I'll finish with one thing. I call it my tire story. So I used to live in Tacoma Park, love Tacoma Park. I was so happy about living in Tacoma Park near the Langley Park area. But if you asked me, is there a tire shop near you? I would draw a blank stare like that. And then I had a flat tire. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, where are there tire shops in my area? Turns out there's one just literally a minute away. Now, it was always there, literally driving by the thing billions of times. When did I look for it? Exactly. And we're so overwhelmed with information that sometimes it's important to at least know who to ask the question when you need it. Ideally, you do a lot of planning. So this presentation is about knowing things ahead, because when you reach that crisis point where you need to have something right now as an answer, that might not be the best time to find the answers, but at least you should know. So Carol will be telling you about a phone number you can call for things, but just keep the tire story in mind because it's very telling of how we run our lives overall. Okay, I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah, first of all, we want to thank Pazit for that wonderful presentation, very helpful. But I'd also like to introduce Carol Smith and ask her to stand up, who has been here and has brought you the materials that are on display and available in the hallway on your way out. And in addition, Carol, if you'd like to say a few words, we'd like to hear from you.
But I can certainly say, I'm with a contractor now. I'm retired from Montgomery County. I've worked there 40 years in the same program I'm contracting with now, but in a different role. So I don't work directly with clients. But mostly we got a state fund, a grant a couple years ago, just to do these outreach events. And I laugh because when I first started with Montgomery County, I worked in the same, what is now essentially the same unit. But our title was called Outreach. That was the name of our program. But over the years, with the creation of, HHS for the county, a lot of those things fell by the wayside. So we were never really able, or very rarely able, to go out and do these outreach events to let people know of the services that do exist. But our main number, and it's on a flyer, it's probably one of our most important things. It talks about some of the programs, but the 240-777-3000 is the phone number for my old unit. There are 7 workers assigned to that unit. Generally, 2 are physically in the office each day during the week, but other than vacations and emergency sick leave, all 7 answer that phone line, and will, whether it's a 2-minute question you have or a 20-minute because you don't have any idea what's wrong, but you have all kinds of issues, they will sit down and listen and go through it, and then try to refer you to another part of our agency or another program that, can provide help for you. We also have, when Pazit was talking about advanced planning, we do have the state attorney general, I think for the county, has what they call an advanced planning directive, which is, you don't have to have it, but it gives you a starting point as to what to look for, the kinds of questions to ask. But it is medically and legally binding if someone does fill that out. So I guess that's about all I have to say right now.
Jen, that phone number that sounded so useful, if you could repeat that one more time for
Okay.
anybody who wants to write it down.
And it's on a bunch of flyers out on the table out here. It's 240-777-3000. Aging and Disability Resource Unit. Yeah.
Gary, open the chat, or Tim, you open the chat? Would you open the chat?
Oh,
There's a message.
Let me see.
Okay.
Please remind people that the link to advanced directives are in the silent announcement. The last one says, please remind people that the link to advanced directives
are in the silent announcements every week. And then we have another one about aging and disability services phone line. 240-777-3000.
Stein, if you want to have a more conversation about things that, you know, stuck out, things you want to think about. Oh, sorry. I'm here. I don't know how long you want to do this for. I am here for any kind of questions or ideas. I think Gary's intent is to continue this conversation, maybe have a series of events that perhaps explore in depth particular topics if you're interested. So this is more invitation for a conversation rather than just a point in time. I'm happy to come back anytime or figure out other folks who can then speak to different subjects. Question? No, the lady with the short hair there.
I think it might be helpful for us, for our committee, if we do some follow-up to know if there's specific areas, specific subjects that fall under this big topic that you might like, more conversation or more information about. We can continue this.
I think for the community, a more in-depth discussion about advanced directives, not just the DNR, which I have, but
Yep.
there are many examples that we can think of as a group that would help us to be more helpful to our offspring when they have to make decisions.
Can you give it to Patty? She can respond. Patty. Patty.
Well, we would love to do more discussion about advanced directives anytime. And that's why we do this every or twice a month, I think, or once a month at least, but we also could do a whole community meeting again. I wanted to ask you while you're here, could you mentioned something about services that the county give for rehabbing homes to make them more safe. Could you speak to that, please?
The county has a website. Could you go online and it's called Design for Life, Montgomery County. The county has a tax credit program for homeowners who would like to make some changes to their homes to create them a higher level of accessibility. And it has gone through some permutations based on feedback from a community. Essentially, you tell the county you want to do this. There are various levels of accessibility. There's visitability, there's just, the grab bars, or it could be a ramp or whatever you want to do. They need to approve your plan, but once you do the plan, the guys from the Office of Permitting will go in and say, yes, this is a good plan. The idea for the county is this. There are a lot of contractors out there who really don't know what they're doing. We want to make sure that whatever plan you want to put in place is actually going to serve your needs. It makes it more cumbersome and less flexible. And yet it would ensure that whatever you want to do is safe and effective. So you work with the county. Once the plan is submitted, you can then get property tax credit from the county. It's pretty generous. It's underutilized. And so I would like to maybe bring someone here to talk about that. The state has a property tax credit for home renovations such as this. It's more flexible and easier to access. So if you do a program, I think you should have all of them. What we're missing is someone who can come into your house for free, look around and say, you do this is going to fix your problem. We used to have a program with occupational therapists who were able to do that, but it's more than just occupational therapists. It's actually a built environment issue. And there are some folks in the construction world who have what we call a certified aging in place builder. They are all on the website. You can find them. As a county employee, I cannot recommend one over the other. But if you do want to make any kind of upgrades to your home, maybe Gary, the committee, we can think about folks that have a better reputation, that have demonstrated professionalism around that, and they can tell you a bit more in depth about the kind of things you can do. I'm seeing a hand there, and then Barbara, do you want to? Rebuilding together. Ah, okay. Yes. For folks who are making less than 80% of area median income, and sometimes they're even more flexible, county does have a whole program to help you actually give you a grant or do the work either with professionals or with volunteers to perform those upgrades. They also do weatherization and other necessary repairs. I actually I sat on their board for 6 years until last March. Rebuilding Together are a remarkable organization. In fact, I don't know if you guys are involved with them because they're always looking for groups to do home rehabs. So that's an invitation to do a whole other project with Rebuilding Together. Habitat for Humanity also has money from the county to provide free of charge. I think maybe they have a small loan, depends on your income, to perform the same services. Thank you for reminding me of that because it's pretty critical and they're amazing, truly amazing. So perhaps a whole session would be about if you're a homeowner, you want to do it on your own, you have your own resources. If you are lower income, they will tell you about how to apply and what are the guidelines and all that. So it could be a whole session. Barbara.
So there might be a retired federal employee in the room, I don't know. But if you have long-term care insurance, your long-term care insurance likely will pay for modifications in your home before you need it. I'm not kidding you.
Well,
Really.
I think
Yes.
it depends on the policy.
It depends on the policy. Well, you might be able to submit for reimbursement. And think about it.
Yeah.
It helps them avoid potentially paying for long-term care.
If
It comes
log-
out of the maximum lifetime benefit,
Mm.
but generally speaking, but it's worth looking at. And if you want me to look at it, I'd do that for you. I know how
It
to do that.
sounds as though there should be a whole series, at least one in-depth conversation, a workshop for folks who are seriously looking into what that means and how they can look at it and bring professionals from rebuilding, from the constructor industry, from long-term care insurance. I don't even know who to talk to, but yes.
I just want to point out that for things like grab bars in bathrooms, you need it way before you break your leg.
And also,
This is not a senior issue. And yet when I renovated my bathrooms, they're all set up. And I use it all the time, not because I'm 90, but because it's there and it's handy. And yes,
thank you. And grab bars, if they're not done well, we find their duds and all
pull
that.
right out of the wall.
Exactly. So you need
especially
to
if
really
they're
know.
heavier.
Exactly. You need to know what you're looking for.
So the county really needs to push. And I've seen in over 55 communities,
Yeah.
these little tiny grab bars that are like maybe 2
Yeah.
feet long and they're at an angle and oh, well, we don't like the looks of those others. Well,
But
it's not about looks.
So Barbara will also be able to join me in this. So the HOC for a while HOC is a local affordable housing authority. And they were really into accessibility and they built all these things that were like with accessibility in mind, and they couldn't rent them out because it wasn't as pretty. So here they are investing all this, thinking they're doing good. And then those grab bars can really be a turnoff. So why would a senior building developer build things and then have people who he plans to not want a unit because it looks too much, it reminds them perhaps too much of old age. So I was talking to this guy, she's a woman, she's a physician, and she does all these cool things, and there's always a gap between what people want and what they need. There's things that you want to have in your life and things you don't want, and then there's things you could really use, but because you don't want them, you just shove it aside. Okay, another story, true story. I love telling stories. Okay, I'll do this. So this woman, when I live in Tacoma Park, it's super hilly, really pretty hills and greens and trees. And our neighbors, the Daigles, they had a fantastic house, 30 stairs to the main door. And then one day, Miss Daigle fell and broke her hip. And she wasn't that old. That was the last time she saw the inside of her house. Literally, one day she was there, the next day she was in rehab, and then they moved to Riderwood. Right?
So I'm wondering, all the programs in the county, do you have to get a permit to do all of those things? I figured. All right. So that counts me out sometimes. I know.
I don't like permitting. I'm with you. The bureaucratic minutia and hassle of forms and waiting and application and staff and inspectors, it is hair tearing. I agree with you. I think there is no other way.
This is a real simple question. Can you speak to whether or not gas stoves, ranges are safe for seniors with any mental disability?
I think all stove except induction ovens are unsafe. Some of the electric ovens, stove, there is a device, but you need to actually install it to stop fires from happening. So regardless of stove, gas, or electric, they're equally as dangerous.
Unless it's induction.
Unless it's
Unless
induction.
and induction requires a learning curve that's sometimes
Induction, I
too
just
great.
installed one. It was a nightmare.
Yeah,
I swear.
I
It
know.
was a nightmare. I don't regret it,
right.
but everything you do will be a hassle.
If you
What?
I just installed
fantastic.
one. It's easy.
Well, mine was a nightmare.
Well, it's not necessarily a nightmare.
Yeah. I used one at Airbnb. It
Yeah.
is not something a person that has some mental
Yeah.
decline can learn.
So
That's
here's the thing.
biggest
Let's
concern.
talk about cognitive decline. Okay, let's put this on the table. Cognitive decline is a thing. It happens a lot as you age. It happens more frequently. It's a very complicated landscape to navigate because it's not as though on Monday you have all your faculty, everything is fine, stay out of my business, thank you very much. And then on Tuesday, it's all gone, unless of course major trauma. And then all of a sudden everybody knows it's pretty obvious you need to be in this person's business because they cannot make their own decisions. The thing in between, I call it the gray zone, is incredibly complicated to navigate because the person still has abilities and they push back, like, don't be in my business. It's my life. Who are you to come in and tell me what to do? Be it friend, family, neighbors, community, whatever. And so navigating, when do you step in and tell somebody they cannot do things a certain way? And when do you step back? Because self-determination, agency, autonomy is incredibly complicated and painful for everybody involved. And there's zero good answers. There is no algorithm you can plug in and you don't need to think about it. You don't need to feel too much. It will all be given to you and handed down. I guarantee you it's one of the most difficult landscape to navigate for families. Not to mention the fact that lots of people live alone. What happens if you live alone? There's no networks for you. Lots of people do that. When they have cognitive decline, there isn't anybody there to even see it. So I don't want to go into dark territories, but it is complicated. Yes, I'm staying on this. Okay.
I see there's a question up, but on this particular topic before you left it.
Okay.
Is there a county service or something
Yes.
that those of us in families that have needs to navigate
Yes.
that tenuous,
Yes.
please do tell.
Yes. So the number that Carol had given you, Carol, that's her bread and butter. This is why we have Carol here. And there are some things that you can get from the county for assessment. Most of the time, county is willing to show up if they're invited. But if, let's say, you're worried about somebody and they say, my own business, thank you very much, County cannot just come in and say, oh, we got a call from here, you need to let us in. So it's about building relationship of trust and have the person involved understand that nobody's out to get them. We just want to see how we can support people. But that's what Carol's unit is. In some circumstances, I recommend what I call aging life planners, formerly known as geriatric care managers. Jessa has one. The 3 nonprofit that I have in the area, I recommend them, not the private one. Not because they're not good, because I feel more comfortable talking about the non-for-profit organization that provided is Jewish Social Service Agency, Iona, it's based in DC, and Seabury Services. They're formerly known Episcopal Senior Services. It's not cheap, but for families who are really struggling and there's so many relationship problems, bringing a third party, unbiased expert to come in and help mitigate or navigate the landscape, the land minefield that is this kind of decision is super helpful. Yeah.
Is that information, the resource to that agency out in your table? Okay, but is it something we can pick up and have?
And you can also get, they also have their own organization, the Aging Life Care Managers, and you can put in your zip code and find the one that's based in Brookville.
Okay, sorry. The other information would be mostly in our resource guide. It's a booklet with many, it's divided into different categories, but it will have, the private case managing services, nonprofit, and a few, I think, for-profit, because they do take advertising for this.
Yeah. I want to say something about the gas stove or driving or whatever. When a person ages or a couple ages, their adult children tend to have almost a knee-jerk reaction. You can't stay at home anymore. We are worried about you. You need to move out of the house. And sometimes that is indeed the case. The level of safety concerns are so much, or inability to function is such that it's not possible. But it's not always the case. And sometimes it's important to find creative solutions. So let's take the gas stove in question. What if we disconnected the stove completely and it just wasn't an option? You couldn't use it. And then the person would get Meals on Wheels in the house. So you can take care of food. Food will be present and available. And a person wouldn't have to leave the house simply because they were forgetful about their stove. So using some creative troubleshooting and brainstorming is really important, which is why every case is unique and special and needs to be considered individually.
The life care managers also help with that whole, and I can speak as a child who asked her parents not to drive and her mom to move out of her house, that I was inexperienced at the time, and my parents would have benefited from having an expert in aging working for them to intervene between them and me, right? So in terms of autonomy and agency, to have that expert working for you is worth a lot.
I just want to note something that look who stayed in the room. We started multi-generationally, and then the younger people's like, oh, not my business. But it is their business. And I think until they recognize that, they will be in very dire straits when they will hit the wall. So building awareness, even within communities, aging is everybody's business. The fact that you're not aging doesn't mean it's not your business. So just a plug.
One of the hesitations I have about aging in place, in addition to myriad structural concerns about the house, is I've known multiple people who have stayed in their homes, and I know dealing with some elderly relatives, the more the cognitive facilities go, the more they rely on familiarity and routine and what they're used to. So I've seen and, had friends dealing with parents, multiple people who stayed in their houses beyond the point that they should have, at which time they are dead set against moving anywhere because it's too strange and frightening. And it seems to me also that anybody living independently as they age needs some kind of case manager, a daughter, a resident daughter nearby, preferably somebody who cares enough to show up, speak up, intervene. And if you don't really have that kind of close family member, then even if you have a village, it's going to be hard for somebody who has the authority and the kind of credibility with older people to do it. That's my reservation.
Okay. Complicated landscape. I will unpack this. Sometimes daughters are the worst people to make such a decision because of fraught relationships. That's why I think, all families are miserable in their own unique way. Do you know that? It is so unique, and figuring out what's the best solution really is dependent on circumstances, both in terms of temporal circumstances and as if geographic circumstances. I've seen people move and thrive because they were so isolated and miserable. I've seen people move and wilt because they hated it. And it's so impossible to predict how a person would respond, which makes the decision making even more complicated because no one's a prophet. No one can predict the outcome of any decision a person's make. And I will add to that, the vast majority of folks, whether they have full faculties or they don't, will be reluctant to take in someone's professed advice, say, you should move. I know your life. You should just get up and move because blah, 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 blah. The vast majority of people will say, thank you very much. And that's just a fact. So we can have the best systems in place, care managers for free, and free transportation service, free packing services. And people will say, what? Thank you very much. I mean, think about each and every one of you in this room. How many people would like to have somebody show up on their doorstep, friend or foe, and say, I got you. I know better than you what you need to do with your life. Right? Why? And then what do? You get really upset because who are you to be in my business? Whether you love me or don't, it doesn't matter. Because we are all about, this country was built on what? Thank you. Bootstrap and all, rugged individualism. Nobody can be in my business. Live free or die. So we live on those values. That's how we communicate. And these are the system we established. We built system, the foundation of which is autonomy, agency, self-determination, individual rights over the rights of everybody else, for better or worse. And then all of a sudden we start saying, wait a minute, no. There are exceptions to the rule. And we set the rule differently when we say it's different. So families find actually the point of which adult children need to confront their parents for that purpose as the most fraught in their family lifetime. And I've seen family fall apart because of that, because they didn't have somebody to help them navigate it. Or maybe there was doomed to begin with because the relationship are messy. And lifetime of that is messy. I was talking to somebody, doesn't matter who, what, when, and they said that it was more difficult for them to take care of their parents because they love them too much. Because then everything becomes so difficult. If I don't love my parents so much, I'm like, it's a little easier. Things don't feel as heavy. But if I'm like so invested, everything, I feel so guilty and I feel so sad and then these emotions are so big, you can't even make a decision because you're so in chaos. Are you having fun yet?
Amazing. I've learned a lot, some of which I knew and some of which I should have known. But I would like to thank Kazita again and Carol again and wish them well and thank them for their help. And send you Unless there's another question. Are you?
I'm sorry, I apologize. My mom didn't know I was gonna live here.
For changing your name without going through all the formal process.
Individual questions, particular, specific questions you have, don't pass the opportunity.
Thanks for watching our video. For more content from Sandy Spring Friends Meeting, click to subscribe.